What's up, YouTube? Today we're giving you the do's and the don'ts of fly fishing, and this is your beginner's guide to the ever so elegant sport.
So obviously you're gonna come in, get home from going to your fly shop and talking to your local fly pro about what rod you should get for the type of fish. And if you're trout fishing, you'll probably have a lighter 3 to 6 weight rod. If you're pike fishing, you'll probably have a heavier 8, 9, 10 weight rod. So you're gonna take out your rod out of the packaging, whatever, and if you got it pre-made or if you did get it at a fly shop, they'll probably have everything on it. On your reel, you'll have your backing. So on your reel, you'll have your backing and then your fly line. The fly line is what actually helps you cast, and the backing is just there if a fish decides to pull it all, or if you're a professional one day, you'll be able to cast your entire amount of fly line and get to your backing.
Floating or sinking, Tristan?
Well, if you're fishing a floating fly like this, you're probably going to want to have sinking line. But if you're fishing a bait fish streamer imitation, you'll most likely want sinking if you're doing it in deep water, and floating if you're doing it in a little bit shallower water. Just depends on the circumstances, and there's plenty of videos out there for that. First off, like all fishing rods, you'll want to thread your fly line through your eyelets, and most fly lines come with this pre-made on it, but obviously mine didn't. You're going to want to search up how to tie a loop knot in fly line, and you're going to have a loop on the end of your fly line that allows you to interchange leaders at all times. So first things first, with your leader, you're going to have a loop on the end of your leader and a loop on the end of your fly line, and you're going to thread your fly line loop through your leader loop, and then through your fly line loop you're going to pull your tag end, and what it's going to do is cause a loop to loop connection so that it's super duper easy to change leaders and all that fun stuff. At the end, what it will look like is this. You'll have 2 loops together, so that all you have to do is just thread your leader back through its loop, and it comes off and you can put your next leader on. So leaders are important in fly fishing because most times you're trying to fish a finesse setup, and most fly leaders are tapered, so they'll start off as like a heavier line, like 9-10 pound, and they'll drop down near the end to like a 3 to 6 pound line. And what you can do, unless you're some oil tycoon, you're going to want to buy some tippet. And tippet ties onto the end of your fly line, and it basically just saves it. And for tippet to tie it on, you just want to tie it just like any other leader to mainline connection. Just a little bit there. Yeah, you just want to tie it just like a normal leader to mainline connection type thing, or leader to leader. And there's plenty of YouTube videos out there for that. But this is a beginner's guide, so I'm assuming you're just going to use the leader.
Well, here's the don'ts of fly fishing casting.
How can I still get it to go straight?
You're watching a master at work.
And this is how you do the do's of casting. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull your fly line out 3 to 4 feet off the bat. And if you read any old timers book or fly fishing book, or anyone who's really, really into fly fishing, they're going to tell you to do 10, 2, 10, 2, 10, 2, 10, 2. And keeping that wrist lock back and forth, 10, 2, 10, 2, 10, 2. Scrap that. What you're going to want to do is, because everyone's bodily functions and physiology is different, find what works right. So with that amount of fly line out, if you can, set up your phone on a front step or a tripod or your vehicle, and you want to go back and forth, and you're going to want to see your line loop out and loop back and loop out and loop back. And before you start pulling your rod the opposite direction, you want that line to loop all the way out so that when you pull it, you're pulling it in a straight line so you don't get knots. And then as you get more comfortable, pull out a little more line, little more line, little more line, and just keep practicing that. And as you get farther and farther out, you're going to have to let it go for a bit longer, and then when you go out, what you want to do to get it to lay nice and flat and get your leader to extend out is you want to bring your rod tip down while still letting fly line out. Because if I just go like this and just, well, see how that didn't work because I didn't let any line out, so I only have 2-3 feet between my leader and my fly. What you want to do is, like, say you finish your cast and you're going, you want to let your line out while your line is pulling and your rod is going down, because otherwise you're stopping that momentum and it's just going to cause it to bulge up on top of your fly line.
We don't want that.
And so I'll just go over it again. Start with 3, 4, 5, 6 feet of line out, go back and forth and back and forth, back and forth, and just let that fly line loop out and loop out and loop out. And eventually you're going to figure out, and you're going to do some research, and you're going to find things called spay casting and roll casts and bow and arrow casts. But for now, this is just a beginner's guide, so we're just doing the conventional fly cast. And so you want it to land out, and when you pull it back, loop it back, let that line go out, rod tip forward, and the line out of your hand, and it'll extend out. And don't get discouraged if you can't get it after 45 hours, because I didn't. Everyone takes a bit of time. You might pick it up on your second cast, and you might pick it up after 150,000 hours of doing this. It really just depends on how well you can pick up this sort of thing. And everyone takes a different amount of time. But eventually you'll be able to get out farther and farther, and like I said before, you'll be able to cast all of your fly line all the way to your backing. So now you're stuck with fly choices. And depending on what you fish for is the different style of fly you choose. But what I would recommend is talk to your local fly fishing professional at a local fly fishing shop. And they're gonna give you a list of recommendations of things that they have heard other anglers catching on. But I can give you a few recommendations that you wanna have. First, you're going to want to have some different variations of Adams. You want some parachute Adams, some regular Adams if that would focus. But you're going to want a few different models of flies, and you're going to want some elk hair caddis, some deer hair caddis, because you know caddis. You're also going to want to go for a couple of nymphs, and that's something that a fly shop professional can help you out with, because you want to match the hatch at certain times of year. But you know what they say, depending on the time of year is depending on what they eat. And sometimes, you know, big pike like big flies and big trout like big flies, right, Ruben? Yeah, see, exactly. So you want to have variety in your tackle box so that you're not just stuck with 1 or 2 items that may not catch you a fish or may catch you all the fish. It really just depends on the time of year.
Mr. Talkie Pants.
Okay.
He has more to say.
Okay, so you followed everything in the video to a T. You know how to cast, you know how to put a leader on, you know how to set up your fly rod, you know how to pick out a hook, what type of fly that you want to use. But you're going out and you don't know how to finish off that fish catch so that you actually can catch it. And so what you're going to want to do is, say you're going to have it out there and a fish is going to rise. If it's a dry fly, they're going to rise. If it's a streamer, they're going to just hit it. And if it's a nymph, they're just going to pull down that indicator, which is just a fancy bobber. I don't know why they don't just call it a bobber. But
it's a good point, Tristan.
You know, don't mind me. But so essentially, if it's a dry fly you're fishing, they're going to come up, and don't set the hook as soon as you see that fish eat your fly, because they're gonna have their mouth open facing up. You're not gonna hook that fish probably 5 times out of 10. 5 times out of 10 you will. If you count 1, 2, and then set it, that fish is going to have grabbed that fly, turned down to swim underneath the water again. So you're setting the hook up against it, hooking it in the corner of the mouth. If it's a streamer, they're going to be eating it like this. And so what you want to do is, again, count 1, 2, and you're going to be fishing it like this, stripping it in, and you're going to want to strip set it. And that goes with all of this. With a fly rod, you don't just yank it. You pull like this, and you pull the line out at the same time that you set. And then you can load your rod and fight the fish. And 9 times out of 10, it's not going to get you to your reel. But if it does, reel it in like a normal fish. If it wants to run, let it run. If not, just strip it in, keep tension with your finger, and let it fight. But you're like, yeah, okay, I want to set the hook on a fish, but where do I catch a fish? So there's 3 different scenarios that you're really going to be fishing, especially in like North America. You're going to be fishing streams and creeks, lakes, and ponds. With a stream and creek, there's what's called a seam, and this is what's the easiest to catch fish on at a beginner. So you're going to have some sort of bend in the river, and it's going to come in like this. You're going to have really fast water coming in, depending on what side it comes in. And on the opposite side, you're going to have slower moving water because it hits that bend. On either side, it's going to hit it. And where that slow and that fast moving water meet is called a seam. That fish, because they're lazy, is going to sit in the slow moving water, watching that seam, waiting for flies to come down. They're going to move over to it, come up and eat it, and then move back into the slow moving water. In a pond setting, if you're indicator fishing, basically just, well, if you're any kind of fishing, just fish everywhere, because you don't really know where the fish are unless you're seeing them rise, which is a good telltale sign. If you're fishing big streamers for pike, you're going to want to do the same thing, fish everywhere, but there's 2 main areas I can point out. In the spring, you're going to want to fish shallow water, shallow sandy flats, shallow mud flats, shallow weed beds, because they're up spawning. In more of the middle of summer, you're going to want to fish deeper weed beds. If you can find a cabbage weed bed, that's money, and you're just going to want to keep moving and fishing. Don't sit still. Cast that streamer, keep trucking along. And with a pond's pretty small, cast everywhere, fish it. And, this should be enough information for you to go from buying a fly rod at a store and buying your flies and hooks and stuff, being able to set it up, and then getting out on the water to fish and hopefully catch your first fish. And if you'd like to see an intermediate guide and a professional guide, even though I wouldn't really call us professionals at fly fishing, leave that in the comment, like the video, subscribe, and send this video to a friend that you think is terrible at fly fishing and needs some more advice.